Good evening, everybody. It looks like everybody was waiting for me. It's called to order the November 2019 Manitowoc County Board of Supervisors monthly meeting. First up will be invocation by Supervisor Marsh, followed by a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Everybody please rise.
Dear Lord, bless the meeting and help us to focus on working with each other to reach an outcome that will help our county. You bless us every day, so help us also to remember that all things come from you and help us to be good stewards of all he gives us. In your name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, Supervisor Marish. I'm going to jump ahead to one thing. Roll call is going around. 22 members are present. Supervisors Williams and Bruner are excused, and I have not heard from Supervisor Zimmer, so he is considered absent at this time. Next, I'd like to continue on with a tradition I started several years ago. Recognition of the supervisors who have served in the military in honor of Veterans Day, which is next, as everybody knows, next Monday, November 11th. So as I call your name, if you please stand, I would appreciate it. I hope I got these in the correct order. So we're going to start with Supervisor Nord Vogt, United States Navy. Well, Supervisor Williams is excused tonight, but United States Marine Corps. Supervisor Jim Ballman, United States Army. Supervisor Zimmer is not here tonight, but you as well, U.S. Army. Supervisor Swade, United States Army. Supervisor Hendrickson, United States Navy. Supervisor Mink, United States Army. And last but not least, Supervisor Dave Dizak, United States Navy. We'll give it all a round of applause. And if there's any veterans out in the audience, well, I know the sheriff's out. I've seen him. He was here. Please rise. We'd like to thank you for your service as well. If there's any veterans in the audience. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, consideration and correction of our minutes from our October 28th, 2019 board meeting. Motion by Supervisor Hoffman, second by Supervisor Banky to approve. Any discussion on motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried unanimously and the minutes are approved. No additions or deletions to the agenda. Thank you very much, Jessica. So we will start off with reports of the county supervisors, officers, and County Executive Ziegelbauer and Jerry Noiser, our Public Works Director, and Dale from Ascend Services could come up to the podium. That'd be great. We have a proclamation. I mentioned we have a proclamation for Manitowoc County American Recycles Day 2019 for November 15th of 2019. We have Dale Kainberg here. He's from Ascend Services. As you know, Manitowoc County partners with Ascend Service to run our material recovery facility, also known as the MRF, and as an acronym, I guess. But anyways, whereas Manitowoc County residents generate more than 30,000 tons of solid waste per year, and this solid waste is buried at the local landfill site. And whereas Manitowoc County residents annually recycle or compost more than 17,000 tons of material through various collection programs. And whereas the Manitowoc County Recycling Facility is the most utilized municipal recycling program in Manitowoc County, serving all county residents and having helped reduce the volume of solid waste going to the landfill site from 58,000 tons per year in the early 90s before the existing recycling program to the present yearly tonnage of about 30,000 tons. And whereas recycling saves precious energy, conserves valuable natural resources, protects the environment, reduces landfill needs, and has a positive economic impact. And whereas Manitowoc County residents can do more to reduce and recycle through education and participation. And whereas waste reduction and the purchase of recycled contact products are critically important elements in an environmentally responsible waste management program. And whereas America Recycles Day is a national promotion to help raise awareness and provide education about recycling and buying recycled products. And then now, therefore, I, Bob Ziegelbauer, County Executive, and Jim Bry, County Board Chairperson, proclaim Sunday, November 15, 2019, America Recycles Day 2019 in Manitowoc County. Jerry, if you want to.
Thank you very much. I can't tell you, again, thank you to the county. This has been such a great partnership. The facility out there employs 22 Ascend services, combination of staff and participants. It's been over 20 years now. 22? What were we at? You were at Holiday House way back then. So it's just such a great thing, but I do want to take just a second to recognize two individuals that run the day-to-day operations out there. John Reisenbeechler, county employee, and Mark Jacobs. Those two individuals, if you know them, if you see them when you stop out there, thank them. They're the ones that are out there day in, day out. Jerry and myself, we assist. We get the phone calls when they need a little help, but really, those phone calls don't come that often. So really, if you know those gentlemen, thank them. Again, I thank the county. I hope this partnership between the county and Ascend Services lasts many, many more years. So thank you. Thank you.
Public comments. If there's anybody from public wishing to speak to a matter germane to the agenda this evening, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed to speak approximately 3 minutes. Just give your name and address. Is there anybody wishing to speak this evening? Anyone wishing to speak this evening? Yes, Maura, we'll start with you.
Chip Yost, Centerville. Last night I attended the Finance Committee meeting held to pass our proposed county budget out of committee to the full board of legislators. I listened as County Executive Bob Ziegelbauer said that our county is, quote, operating at a surplus now. We accumulated $2 million in surplus in 2018. We are paying off twice as much debt as we are borrowing. Let's review. For the 4 budget years of 2017 to 2020, our county borrowed $16.4 million and we paid off $9.4 million. So that leaves a $7 million difference. Those are all principal amounts without interest. But the amount of our principal debt only went down $1.8 million, call it $2 million. What happened to the other $5 million? Our property taxpayers' money went to interest and to fiscal charges. Tax dollars exported out of our county to do business with bonding companies. As you all know, I advocate for a half cent on a dollar spent. County-wide sales tax is the most conservative, fiscally responsible way to fund our county's recurring revenue shortfalls so we can pay as we go. That would reduce the amount of property taxpayers' dollars exported out of our county as we use more tax dollars to buy labor and materials locally, and everyone would pay something. It would reduce the strain on our annual county budgets as we face future, sometimes unpredictable service needs that our efficient Manitowoc County government provides to all of us. After this wet season, how much snow and ice must be removed to drive safely? How many innocent opioid addicted newborn babies will require monitoring of their prolonged life-saving medical care? What if we have more tornadoes like 2000 at St. Nazianz or Cooper Towns back in '94? We just don't know. Years back, I worked with people receiving welfare and unemployment compensation to help them get reemployed. One thing I learned is that folks are very good planners. They always have resources in reserve. Before I finish, I'd like to note that our county implemented the half-cent on a, Before I finish, I'd like to note that had our county implemented the half-cent on a dollar spent sales tax 4 years ago, from 2017 to 2020, our county would have had at least $21.6 million more in revenue today and much less debt. And you, our county board legislators, wouldn't be burdened with deciding whether to vote to borrow another $1.275 million in principal this year with an estimated interest cost of $250,000 over the loan's term. Tonight, I ask that you reject the county executive's proposed borrowing of $1.275 million to balance our county's 2020 budget. Instead of adding more debt to our existing $39 million of principal and interest debt as of last New Year's Day, I support using a portion of our county's $2 million reserve to balance our 2020 county budget. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Maura. Is there anybody else wishing to speak this evening? Anyone else wishing to speak? And for a third and final time, anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll declare public comment closed. Next up will be our communications are shown on the agenda. Next after that will be appointments by the county executive. First up is the Commission on Aging to appoint 2 members to succeed Connie Goulash and Linda Langman for a 3-year term expiring December of 2022, and the recommendations are for Connie Goulash and Linda Langman. Motion by Supervisor Swade, second by Supervisor Gauger to approve those appointments. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Next, Local Emergency Planning Committee to appoint 5 members to succeed Jessica Backus, Jerry Wendt, Jamie Aulick, alternate, Robert Hennings Jr., Mary Howda, alternate, Jessica Wojnarowski, and Supervisor Rick Hendrickson as an alternate, Supervisor Randy Vogel, for a 2-year term expiring December of 2021. And the appointees are Jessica Backus, Jerry Wendt, Jamie Aulick with the alternate Robert Hennings Jr., Mary Howda with the alternate Jessica Wojnarowski, and Supervisor Rick Hendrickson as an alternate with Supervisor Randy Vogel. Is there a motion by Supervisor Falkowski, second by Supervisor Holzbach to approve those appointments? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Veterans Service Commission to appoint 1 member to succeed Kurt Carlson for a 3-year term expiring December of 2022, and the recommendation is for Kurt Carlson. Motion by Supervisor Niles, second by Supervisor Hendrickson. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried, and all those appointments are approved. Thank you very much on those. We'll jump right in with committee reports. We're going to go a little out of order this time. With Planning and Park has such an array of ordinances and people in the audience, I'm sure that are here for us. So we're going to go first. So I will turn over to Supervisor Dizak, who is the chair of the Planning and Park Commission.
Chairman, we met on October 28th, and like mentioned, we first had a public hearing on the plethora of ordinances coming up. I'll get to those shortly. But first, after that, we discussed and approved 3 variances requests, one for James Hansen in the town of Schleswig, one for Lyman Rock in the town of Cooperstown, and one for Christensen Farms in the town of Cato. All 3 towns approved of the variances, and we also approved them. Discussion then moved to approval of the Nash Estates subdivision. in Kiel, and we subsequently approved that also. Next, came up discussion and acceptance of a letter in support for the Bay Lake Regional Planning Commission fiscal year 2020-2021 grant application for coastal hazard resiliency study, and that was approved also. Then there was a lengthy discussion on allowing equestrian use on the Devil's River Trail. As you recall, we approved the master plan last meeting. After a lengthy discussion with input from several horse riders and planning and zoning individuals, it was decided to allow equestrian use on the trail from Rockwood to Maribel on a trial basis. The use would not start until all required signage was changed and the degree of support from the equestrian groups could be formalized. This is estimated to be done in the spring of 2020 riding season. The topic will also be reviewed by the commission in late summer to review its use. It also has to go through DNR approval also. Next, we approved the snowmobile trail maintenance contracts for 2019 and 2020. And now for the ordinances. We'll start with ordinance number 37, which amends the county code for corporate counsel, placing the said fee schedules in one place. This is kind of a follow-up from last meeting also. The fees were listed in two different chapters, and this will delete that and place them all in one place, and I move for its approval.
So motion by Supervisor Dizak, second by Supervisor Gauger. Discussion on the motion? See none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the ordinance amending Manitowoc County Code Section 2022 permit fees and other charges.
Motion passes 22-0.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to amend the floodplain zoning appendix per a new study for Wilkie Lake. The study removes the listed property from the floodplain, and I have moved for its approval.
So motion by Supervisor Dizak, seconded by Supervisor Wagner. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the ordinance amending Manitowoc County Code Chapter 31 floodplain zoning appendix.
There we go. Motion passes 22-0.
Thank you. Next is the a rezone for Christensen's Farms LLC to rezone 4.92 acres from a natural area to small estate. The area to be considered for rezoning meets past criteria for the commission for rezoning land from the natural area. The Cato Town Board and Town Planning Commission support the proposed change. The proposed area to be rezoned to small estate. Small estate will allow for a single-family home to be built, and I move for its approval.
So motion by Supervisor Dizak, second by Supervisor Henriksen. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the ordinance amending zoning map Christensen Farm RE LLC.
Mine didn't work. Let's see. There we go. Ordinance passes 22-0.
Thank you. Next is ordinance number 40 for the David and Karen Crystal to rezone 5.29 acres from general ag to large estate to allow for their estate planning. It basically breaks a section of land off from the farming area. The area to be considered meets past criteria for rezoning land from general ag. The Liberty Town Board and Town Planning Commission support the change, and there's a minimal amount of farmland that's affected by this request, and I move for its approval.
So motion by Supervisor Dizak, second by Supervisor Vogel. Discussion on the ordinance or the motion? See none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the ordinance amending zoning map for David and Karen Crystal.
Ordinance passes 22-0.
Thank you. We'll move to ordinance number 41 for the Brian and Lori Peterson to rezone 6 acres from exclusive ag to large estate. The area to be rezoned meets past criteria for rezoning land from exclusive ag. The Cassuth Town Board and Town Planning Commission support the change. There's no farmland that's affected by this request, and the proposed zone change will allow the home to be separated from the farmland, and I move for its approval.
Motion by Supervisor Dizak, seconded by Supervisor Marish. Any discussion on the ordinance? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the ordinance amending zoning map for Brian and Lori Peterson.
Ordinance passes 22-0.
Thank you. 3.4 acres from to small estate. The area to be rezoned meets past criteria for rezoning land from exclusive ag. The Maple Grove Town Board and Town Planning Commission support the change. The proposed area to be rezoned to small estate. Small estate will allow for a single-family home to be built. There's a minimal amount of cropland will be affected by this request, and I move for its approval.
Motion by Supervisor Dizak, seconded by Supervisor Kavanaugh. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the ordinance amending zoning map for Russell Bolt.
Ordinance passes 22-0.
Thank you. And moving to ordinance 43 for Samuel and Christina Schrock to rezone 9.9 acres from large estate to general ag, which is kind of backwards what we usually see. The area to be considered for rezone meets past criteria by the commission for rezoning from large estate. Maple Grove Town Board and Town Planning Commission support the change. The proposed area to be rezoned to general ag will allow the addition of more horses. I didn't know this, but there's a limited number of horses based on how you can, how it's zoned, how many you can have on. They want to get more horses. So I move for its approval.
So motion by Supervisor Dizak, seconded by Supervisor Falkowski. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the ordinance amending zoning map for Samuel and Christina Schrock.
Ordinance passes 22-0.
Thank you. Moving to ordinance 44 for Carrie Litke to rezone 3.76 acres from exclusive ag to rural residential. The area to be considered meets past criteria. Mishcot Town Board and Town Planning Commission support the change, and the proposed area to be rezoned to rural residential will allow a single-family home to be built. The area is not being farmed due to soil conditions and steep slopes, so I move for its approval.
So motion by Supervisor Dizak, second by Supervisor Hoffman. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the ordinance amending zoning map for Carrie Litke.
Ordinance passes 22-0.
Thank you. And finally, ordinance 45 for James Hanson to rezone 7.4 acres from general ag to large estate and 4 acres from general ag to small estate. The area to be considered for rezoning meets past criteria. The Schleswig Town Board and Town Planning Commission support the change. Minimal amount of farmland is affected, and this will allow basically a second home to be built and breaks off both areas for their living, where the buildings are away from the farmland. And I move for its approval.
So motion by Supervisor Dizak, second by Supervisor Ballman. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the ordinance amending zoning map for James Hanson.
Ordinance passes 22-0.
Thank you. Our next meeting is December 2nd at 3:30 for our advisory and 4 o'clock for a regular meeting. And that, Mr. Chairman, does conclude my report. Thank you.
Any questions for Supervisor Dizak? You certainly earned your money this month, definitely. Great job, Fred. Not only the commission, but the department as well. We're very pleased and happy to have a great department like that there.
Thank you, Chairman Bryan. Our next meeting will be November 26th in Kiwanee at 10 o'clock with the Commission on Aging and at 10:45 for the ADRC of the Lake Shore. Now is the time also for Medicare Part D. The ADRC is making appointments. I'm pretty sure they're filled up, but if anybody needs to apply or just wants to check their plan, they will go through it with you. That's the end of my report.
Any questions for Supervisor Wagner? Thank you very much. Board of Health, Supervisor Metzger is the chair.
We have no report, but we meet November 14th at 5 o'clock at the Health Department. Thank you.
Any questions for Supervisor Metzger? Thank you. Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, Supervisor Falkowski is our representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had not a meeting for this month, but we will have a meeting January 8th. Thank you. That's my report.
Any questions for Supervisor Falkowski? All right, next up, Executive Committee. We actually met recently, 2 weeks ago, and we're bringing an ordinance and a resolution. The first one will be an ordinance to amend Manitowoc County Code Chapter 4 by creating Section 4.16 on donations, creating a universal donation policy for Manitowoc County. Nobody's doing anything wrong, but we really didn't have a direct policy. And after conferring with our Corp Counsel, Conrad, the Executive Committee took a stand and we bring forth this ordinance tonight. So I'll look for motion by Supervisor Banky, second by Supervisor Droll to adopt the ordinance. Discussion on the ordinance. Supervisor Nichols, you are first.
Yes, I'm just wondering where the amount of $5,000 was come to? Since we have the health department has a $1,000.
Right. I guess, I don't know. I from my standpoint, we threw out some numbers. I first said 1,000, then I said 5,000. From my standpoint, I threw out 5,000 because I don't think it's necessary to bring I guess a resolution every time to the county board for a donation under $5,000. But
Public Safety Committee, and we're one of the committees that receive a number of donations, and I appreciate having the ability to discuss those at the meeting and determine whether or not there are going to be any additional costs to the county result. Sometimes those donations, we purchase something and we have additional costs. So I would move to amend the motion where it indicates $5,000, change those amounts to $1,000.
so there's a motion by Supervisor Nichols. Is there a second by Supervisor Vogel to amend the ordinance to essentially wherever $5,000 it would be amended to $1,000? You have that, Jessica? Okay. All right, discussion on the amendment. I'm not seeing none, so let Jessica type it in quick and then, Supervisor Banky on the amendment.
I won't support the amendment. The thing that we talked about the most was transparency. These items will still come before your committees, your chairs, your department directors will still bring it. It'll still be tracked by the comptroller, county executive, county board chair. Our issue is not to have everything come before the county board. There's still going to be transparency through each committee in donation. So if somebody wants to donate to the K-9 unit, every $1,000 doesn't have to come before the county board. It still will be transparent through your committee. That's where I think the 5,000 came from versus the 1,000. So I won't support the amendment.
Thank you, Supervisor Banky. Any other discussion on the amendment? Just a reminder of the amendment. See none. The amendment is to change the $5,000 amount to $1,000. So with that, the clerk will now conduct the vote on the amendment. Sure. Well, no, that's all right. Everybody knows what we're voting on? Okay, thank you. So, all right. The amendment failed on a vote of 10 to 12 with supervisors Nichols, Metzger, Hanson, Vogel, Wagner, Kavanaugh, Falkowski, Hendrickson, Geimer, and Swade voting yes. So it's back to the main motion of the ordinance with the $5,000 amount. Discussion on that motion? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the ordinance amending Manitowoc County Code, Chapter 4, by creating Section 4.16 donations.
The ordinance passes 17 to 5 with supervisors Nichols, Metzger, Vogel, Falkowski, and Henriksen voting no. Thank you very much on that, but I think Supervisor Benke said it best, that the transparency is definitely going to be there. And the central location of everything coming to the comptroller, there's not that people have been derelict or nobody's trying to hide anything, but some things haven't been coming there, but to have one complete record is going to be very beneficial to Manitowoc County. And I applaud all the department heads and the employees who solicit these contributions. I know Sheriff's been doing a great job with the K-9 unit, and we certainly don't want to see that end. We just want to make sure we have a counting of it. So, all right, excuse me. Next up will be the resolution authorizing Manitowoc County to join the negotiating class in case number 17 MD 2804 in regards National Prescription Opiate Litigation. As you know, we are essentially a plaintiff with that. And I'll let Peter explain a little better. I'm sure he's got a better answer than I do, but what we're actually doing is just continuing on with being part of this.
So as you're aware, we are a litigant in the National Opioid Litigation, the MDL litigation that you often hear about in Ohio. We are one of those plaintiffs. As part of that litigation, there's all kinds of moving pieces, and this is yet another part of that particular matter. This is to where the judges created what's called a negotiating class. So this is essentially acting as you'll often hear as a class action, but it's actually a smaller segment within the opioid litigation. The purpose of a negotiating class is so that the class collectively can negotiate with the defendants in this particular case, but the real reason is that it also will preclude claims for non-litigants in the matter. So it gives the defendants certainty if there is a settlement reached. So for example, there's several thousand litigants in this particular matter, but there are also tens of thousands of other cities, villages, towns that are not part of the litigation. And what that does is for the defendants, gives them uncertainty. So they may settle with all of us, but they still have the potential, quite frankly, to have all these other lawsuits out there. So what a settlement class does is bind those non-litigant parties if they ultimately do not opt out of the class. We are a litigant, so we are by default in that class. What that means is, although we can opt out as well. In this particular case, our counsel, our attorneys in this matter are recommending that we stay in the class and be a part of that negotiating class. And that is what the recommendation out of the executive committee is. The advantage is if there is a global settlement, we know what our allocation will be on a per billion-dollar basis. We've already been, those numbers have been identified based on 3 different factors. So there's a certain amount of certainty. The reality is the downside, if we were to opt out, or excuse me, if we stay in and we don't like the settlement, we're stuck with it. There's nothing we can do. But if we opt out, then we're on our own, and there is a settlement, and that means we would be a litigant against all of these large pharma manufacturers, distributors, those types of players. Quite frankly, that poses its own challenges in and of itself. The recommendation, like I said, from our attorneys is to stay in the class. I agree with that recommendation. While it's not a perfect strategy, I think it's probably the best strategy going forward at this time.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that excellent explanation. Does anybody have any questions of Peter at this time? I'm certainly going to ask during the motion as well, but. All right, I'll accept a motion by Supervisor Benke, seconded by Supervisor Giroux to approve the resolution. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution authorizing Manitowoc County to join the negotiating class in case number 17 MD 2804 in regards to national prescription opioid litigation.
The resolution passes 21-1 with Supervisor Dizak voting no. Thank you very much on that vote and support. As much as I respect Peter and as hard at work as his office does, I don't think we could do this independently. It would be a tough sell, and I'm not sure it would be worth it. But we're taking a chance anyways. And the bottom line is, there seems to be some guilt here or whatever you want to call it, but it'll all come out in the wash eventually anyway. So we'll stay tight unless something changes. Thank you very much on that. We'll move on to next Expo Ice Center Board. Supervisor Gauger is representative there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had met August 9th. We had reviewed some of our open class and market animal committee groups and talent show and brew competitions. We had reviewed the comptroller's financial report. We had some reappointments to the board, and we are short a few, so if you know of anybody that would like to be a volunteer on our expo board, let the office know, and we will take applications, because the more people we have, the better it is. Rumadarema is coming up December 14th. We had our Fairs at a Fair competition for 2020, and our winner was Lydia Lubke. She will take over after the Fairs convention in January. It was kind of an overlap on trying to get all our ducks in a line for when they start, when they finish, and parades, and it's all working out for the best. And that concludes my report.
Any questions for Supervisor Gauger? Thank you very much. Finance Committee, Supervisor Hanson is the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee met last night and we discussed the budget. Eerily quiet this year as compared to the last few years. Not a lot of issues were brought up. Would like to thank the executive. He fielded questions on different personnel issues and pay scales and on borrowing. And I'll have comments later, but with that, I will move to approve the budget for 2020.
So motion by Supervisor Hanson, second by Supervisor Ballman to approve the budget as passed by the Finance Committee last night at their meeting. Any discussion on the motion? If you'd like to continue on, Supervisor Hanson, you're certainly welcome.
Yes, as I stated, there was not a lot of discussion, and I think the inflation rate is low, and the executive did a good job of explaining why it's a good time to borrow. And personally, I've always understood and agreed with the idea of borrowing for projects that are going to last a long time. And be that adding rooms at the UW Green Bay Manitowoc campus, fixing the courthouse, capital projects, those things will last, and it should be spread out for the many people over 30 years that are going to use it. Same with some of the road construction where we're putting down blacktop and we're borrowing money that will last 10, 12, 15 years. That makes sense to spread that out over taxpayers over those years. My concern, if I have a concern with the budget, and I'm still doing a little gymnastics in my head, and please don't call me negative for saying things like this, but I have a concern. I've been here a long time, as many of us have. Many of us have very deep roots here in Manitowoc County. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we can look at different things and go, why are we lagging behind? We've lost population since 1970. We're one of few counties that have lost people in the state of Wisconsin. That data is there for you to mine and look at. Todd sent me a document today, and if you ask him, he will send it to you, about new construction growth. And last night at Finance, we went through it, and we had about a 1.5% growth. And when I looked at the document, it didn't agree with what we were told, but that's because they add in some different things with TIF districts and different formulas for each individual county. But when I compared apples to apples with growth in the state of Wisconsin, the counties that are very near to us are all outperforming us. And that's a concern to me, and it should be a concern to all of us. Yeah, I get that Brown County is bigger and they have the Packers, but they're at a 1.77. Calumet County is at 2.27 growth, new construction growth. Kewaunee County, 1.08. Sheboygan, 1.26. Those are kind of the counties around us. Fond du Lac, of course, was bigger. Outagamie County was bigger. But that concerns me. If I look at our number that compares with those, it's 0.91. I don't know if what we're doing is healthy. Guys, I really don't. But I can look at data and say to myself, we've lost population. Our growth is below other counties around us. I don't want to get into the argument about hiring an organization to help us do that. Okay? I'm not sure that that's right, but we have to do something. We have to explore things to get us moving. This is a great place. We have a beautiful lake. Sheboygan has a beautiful lake. They're a little bit ahead of us in development and growth. Kewaunee is ahead of us. They have that same lake. We're on this beautiful lake shore. We got hardworking people. We have jobs that are here that we're trying to fill. So we shouldn't be losing population. We should be growing. I will back this budget, but we have to start looking at a way to get Manitowoc County growing in population and economically. I don't know what that answer is, ladies and gentlemen, but somebody has to be able to sit down, some of us, somewhere, somehow, and go, what can we do? There are counties with less growth than us, but they're in areas that are not, they're up north and way down southwestern areas of Wisconsin. So I guess we're better than them, but in the counties near us, we're lagging. And I just want you to know that we got to find a solution. This is a great place, but I don't want us getting smaller, and I don't want us lagging more. We got to find a solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hanson. Anyone else on the motion to adopt the budget? Anyone else? Third and final time? Okay, I'll just quickly chime in, I guess. And I can't say I disagree with Supervisor Hanson because we've made those points many times over the last 5 to 10 years. I am going to support the budget. I think for the most part it is a very good budget. I'm extremely pleased with the portion of repaving approximately 14 miles of road here in Manitowoc County. It is, as Bob calls it, an aggressive plan, I guess, regarding our highways. And I agree with that. It's that we need that. Not that our roads were deteriorating at a rapid pace, but continued maintenance is definitely better than let them deteriorate to nothing. And I guess I don't see which party is in control down in Madison either. I don't see more state aid coming for our highways or county trunks. So we're going to, on our own, do it the best way we can. I originally had a big concern when we first started that we were taking approximately $420,000 out of our undesignated reserve. I was under the impression at that time our reserves were only about $1 million. After this, and Todd, I saw you, what would be about 1.7 with Is that a correct statement? So, okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I was talking to Todd Reckelberg, our comptroller. So with the 420,000 taken out for out of the undesignated reserve, we'll still have at December 31st approximately $1.7 million. We need that reserve there, not just for a rainy day fund, but it helps us with our bond rating too. As you know, our bond rating slid several years ago, but I think we're on our way to progressing to make it go back up again. So with that, nothing else, the clerk can now conduct the vote.
County Board Supervisors will now vote on the resolution adopting the 2020 budget and property levy.
The budget passed on a vote of 21-1 with Supervisor Vogel voting no. I'd like to thank the county executive for submitting the budget, and I'd like to thank the finance committee as well, and for those supervisors that participated as well. They did a great job. I mean, some years it's more contentious, and this year wasn't so. But I do agree with Supervisor Hanson, whether this board remains the same next term or whatever, we need to keep moving forward on economic development and progressing in that direction. All right, Supervisor Hanson, you can continue on.
I'll move on. I would also like to thank Supervisor Marsh and Supervisor Benke, who kept us company at all the finance meetings during the budget time. Second resolution is denying a claim for a citizen that claimed that the vehicle, her windshield was damaged when somebody was cutting grass along I-43. Insurance company investigated. They said we should deny the claim, and the committee agreed with them. So I move to deny that claim.
There's a motion by Supervisor Hanson, second by Supervisor Ballman. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution denying claim for Kelly Demers.
Supervisor Swade? We need to add a new energizer? Okay, all right. Resolution passes 22-0. I noticed mine's a little slower tonight too. Maybe the batteries are starting to die. I guess I should ask Supervisor Hanson, do we have batteries in our budget for next year? Okay.
No.
Little levity we need once in a
Yeah.
while.
Should I proceed with the next resolution, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
please,
Okay,
please.
we have another denial of a claim against the county. Automobile was damaged. There is some construction going on County T, and it damaged this automobile, and they were asking for the county to reimburse them. The insurance company said no. I did drive out and look at the signage, and there were signs out there saying, slow down, it's a construction area, and sometimes we just have to do that. So committee decided to deny this, so I so move.
So motion by Supervisor Hanson, second by Supervisor Kavanaugh. Discussion on the motion. I also drove out there too. It was after the fact, but you could see, and I talked to Mark Olson, our highway commissioner, as well about this. There was actually, they went on beyond, I guess, the call of duty and actually marked the pavement too with fluorescent paint. So is there anything perfect? No, but I think it was very well shown that there was a construction area needed to slow down. So I feel sorry I know there was other people that had contacted myself and the county executive as well, but it was a construction zone. It was posted very well and was actually above and beyond the call of duty in my mind. Any other discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution denying claim for Elazar Kadeli.
Resolution passes 22-0. Anything else, Supervisor Hanson?
Just as the Finance Committee will meet next Monday, and Supervisor Williams will be in charge of the committee. That's it.
Okay. Any questions for Supervisor Hanson? Thank you very much. Highway Committee, Supervisor Benke is the chair.
Chairman, we met on October 8th, actually before the county board meeting that night. The thing that I'd like to emphasize the most of what Mark Olson is doing is he talked about the fall training, being in the safety position that I am in the Kohler Company. It really goes a long way when how organized our highway department is with the safety training that goes on. All the different pieces of equipment, we have a lot of new employees. It's a scheduled training session of all the different equipment. Everybody gets a chance to train on everything. We have somewhat of a rodeo so you get used to the equipment, and that will show with the white stuff that's going to come down tonight, and that valued training will definitely go a long way in getting us prepared for what most of us would think is too long of a winter, coming as early as it's come. So that's the one thing that I'd like to compliment Mark on. He's doing a heck of a job there. And we will meet again on November 12th at 4:30 p.m. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for Supervisor Banky? I agree with the snowfall. I was hoping you would have introduced an ordinance to ban snow before December 1st, but
Wouldn't have been a bad idea.
thank you very much once again. Human Services Board, Supervisor Hendrickson is the chair.
Mr. Chairman, we met on October 24th. Lori Fuhr, I'll get her name right yet, Deputy Director of Clinical Services, described the community support program. It began as a result of the move away from institutionalizing people in the 70s. Our agency program became certified in 1996. The goal is to keep people out of hospitals and institutions. To be eligible, a person has to be enrolled in the medical assistance program, have severe and persistent mental illness, have a pattern of hospitalization, or living in a severely dysfunctional way if CSP services are not provided, and significant impairment in one or more areas, including vocations, educational, self-care, independent living, social interpersonal, or community functioning. There are 90 people being served at any given time. Some of them are officially in the CSP, and others are receiving the service but not officially open. An average of 5 to 6 clients are opened and closed each year. Fred Givens, CSP clinical social worker, provides examples of client services and activities. He helps provide basic living skills, training, and helps the client live a full life while managing their illness. The number of crisis calls for adults have increased from last year, and a large portion are related to suicide in various stages, beginning with obtaining information and resources to more urgent issues. The number of crisis calls for children has decreased since we have been using the Emergency Dispatch Center for initiating calls. The projected financial surplus is continuing due to our lower usage at Winnebago and Mendota mental health facilities, as well as higher and budgeted revenues in the WIMCR Medicaid recognition programs. Our next meeting will be December 12th at 4:45. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Supervisor Hendrickson? Thank you very much. Land Conservation Committee, UW Extension Education and Agricultural Committee, Supervisor Wagner is the chair.
The next meeting for the Land Conservation Committee will be November 21st at 4:45 at the County Office Complex. The next meeting for the UW Extension, Education, and Agriculture Committee will be December 19th at 4:45 at the County Office Complex. That's the end of my report.
Any questions for Supervisor Wagner? Thank you very much. Personnel Committee, Supervisor Marish is the chair.
Thank you. We met before the county board meeting tonight, and first item was we reclassified the emergency services specialist position. The current specialist has accepted position in Texas, so at this time it was decided to restructure the position to a program manager position. to assist the Emergency Services Director in the review and developing of policies. So we took care of that, and also we also revised the policy 18.02. It's overtime. It's basically was a to clarify flex time. And the last one was the sheriff had requested a uniform allowance for employees with arrest powers to be increased, and we approved that. Our next meeting will be December 3rd at 4:15. That ends my report. Thank you.
Any questions for Supervisor Marish? Thank you very much. Public Safety Committee, Supervisor Vogel is the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met right before this meeting this evening. And from that meeting, I bring you 3 resolutions. The first one is resolution number 15. It's regarding checks that were presented to different various people that were not cashed in the last 2 years, and I so move.
So motion by Supervisor Vogel, second by Supervisor Hoffman to approve the resolution. Any discussion on the motion? See none. The clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution canceling checks not presented within 2 years of issuance, Sheriff's Office.
Resolution passes 22-0.
Thank you. I also bring to you resolution number 16. This will probably be the last time I'm bringing a resolution like this because the donation is an amount of $2,200 from the St. Nazianz Lions Club to the Sheriff's Office K-9 unit. And I so move.
Motion by Supervisor Vogel, second by Supervisor Henriksen. Discussion on the motion? See none. The clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution accepting donation from the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office K-9 Unit St. Nazianz Lions Club.
Resolution passes 22-0.
Thank you. And finally, the number 17 resolution is a resolution accepting a grant from the state to Manitowoc County Emergency Services in the amount of $3,534.93. I so move, please.
Motion by Supervisor Vogel, second by Supervisor Falkowski. Discussion on the motion? See none. The clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution increasing 2019 appropriation from Emergency Management Performance Grant.
Resolution passes 22-0.
Thank you. Our next meeting is going to be December 11th, 2019 at 5 p.m., second floor of the Manitowoc County Health Department. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for Supervisor Vogel? Thank you very much. Public Works Committee, Supervisor Droll is the chair.
No report, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Transportation Coordinating Committee, Supervisor Ballman is the chair.
Right, we had our quarterly meeting. We welcomed a new member, which is Deanna Gensky, who is the Executive Director of Ascend Services, formerly Holiday House, and also Karen Odom from the Madison Metro. Second quarter reports were reviewed. Overall rides were up 20% compared to the same period as last year, and the rural rides were up 4%, out-of-city rides up 37%. This ridership increase is due to the efforts of Linda Greider, the mobility manager, and Olivia Delikowski, the outreach coordinator. They went to different meal sites. They did radio spots, Facebook pages, just various different methods to get more people riding in the program. And Linda and Olivia's positions are funded by grants. Kim Novak, who's the ADRC business service manager found a ride scheduler program that's very inexpensive and we're going to be using with Greider and Odom working with her, and it'll manage drivers, riders, where they're being picked up. And it's just going to help better to schedule everything and to give us a better idea what's going on. They also added one new volunteer driver, but we're always looking for another one. So next meeting will be announced. That's the end of my report.
Any questions for Supervisor Ballman? Thank you very much. Miscellaneous, we have from Supervisor Banky, a resolution approving the Town of Centerville zoning ordinance for Ricky Sohn. I hope it pronounces his name correct. I'll turn it over to Supervisor Banky. It's a motion by Supervisor Banky, second by Supervisor Gauger to approve the resolution. Any discussion on the motion? See none. The clerk will now conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution approving Town of Centerville zoning ordinance for Ricky Sohn.
Resolution passes 22-0. Thank you very much on that, everything. Just two quick things under announcements. At your seat tonight, you have a memo or a letter from myself. I'll just read quickly. Cody Berg, our IS manager and info security officer, is requesting that we have training. He's given training there's been training to all county employees because of the county computers, but we need the training as well, the security training, I guess, for our email. So I've scheduled that for 5:45 p.m. before our next county board meeting. So hopefully you can be here. If you can't be here, I'll have to talk with Cody. We'll have to make some separate arrangements, I guess, for that. Second, and we've been discussing this, and I thank Supervisor Fakowski for actually reminding me once again. He sent an email earlier this week. When we first went to kind of electronically with the email and stuff, we talked about electronically emailing out the agenda and the packets and stuff, and it's worked well. But I also agreed that we should have it here. Well, at first we weren't going to have it here, but then I had, I guess, some feedback from some of the supervisors. They wanted that packet on hard copy as well, which is fine. Some of those resolutions and some of the things that come from other cities and other counties and that, they're 30, 40 pages. I'm not sure that needs to be printed anymore. And I'll be talking with Jessica. Maybe we can have more of a quick summary instead of printing out 34 pages. But what I'm really getting at, I'm hoping we can make at least contact myself or Jessica or by that meeting when we have December 17th on email, whether you actually want the printed out agendas and things anymore. I know some of you don't need them, some want them, that's fine. Maybe it's come down to that if you don't want everything, maybe you can contact Jessica or the clerk's office, say, I want resolution for the Town of Centerville zoning or some printout. Because I know a very good example of myself. When Supervisor Nichols made his motion tonight, I wanted that, if I was making that motion to amend, I would rather have that paper copy in front of me. But, you know, he could have requested that earlier. So just think about that for next month, and hopefully we can come up. But I don't want to say a different conclusion, but if you opt out, you don't have to want to print it. I'd like to know that by December 17th. Okay, Supervisor Vogel, as my voice is going away, I apologize.
Thank you. I just want to comment on your comment that you just said. I am one, call it old fashioned or whatever. I still like the paper packet.
Mhm.
Matter of fact, I contacted the county clerk this morning and they said it was already delivered here. So I stopped here at about noon and got it and spent all day looking and perusing it. Thank you.
And that's fine. Like I said, you know, I know some don't and some do. Maybe we can just come down to that. And, or like I said, if supervisors want specific items for the, because like I said too, I like the paper copy of the agenda, at least up here. I've got the ability to look at the resolutions if necessary through Jessica or through my phone. But let's just think about that for next month and we'll see what we can come up with. So nothing else, I'll accept the motion. Motion by Supervisor Droll, second by Supervisor Marish to adjourn. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. I don't think it's snowing yet, but have a safe trip home.
Happy Thanksgiving.